Hello and welcome to the Ministry of the Real Truth. Glad to see you here. Today I have come across a kind of, you could say, wacky book from the 1800s called The Garden of Eden by Reverend D.O. Van Slyke. I did some research on him, and we'll get to that in a moment. Okay, he claimed that the Garden of Eden, he located it. He says, our artists failed to give a correct representation of the hanging garden and eastward garden wall. We promise a more correct representation in our next edition. And this cost 15 cents per copy. Sometime in the 1800s, I believe, that it was published. And he had this claim. Okay, it's called Found at Last, the Veritable Garden of Eden, or a place that answers the Bible description of the notable spot better than anything yet discovered, by Reverend D.O. Van Slyke. And it was printed by Independent Printing House, Galesville, Wisconsin, 1886, where he was finally laid to rest. And yeah, more to come. Okay, it's copyrighted to him, 1886. All rights reserved. Okay, preparer's note: typographical errors from the original have been retained, as well as quirks of punctuation, such as the extensive use of asterisks. Preface: on the principle of first know you are right, then go ahead, I, Van Slyke, have been very slow in making public the results of my discovery, but having become thoroughly satisfied that I have a reasonable thing of it, have ventured to publish it. It has appeared in brief articles in the Galesville Independent, I guess that's some sort of newspaper there, and that time, in order to invite general inspection and criticism. When God made man to dwell on the face of the earth, he evidently must place him somewhere. In giving the antediluvians a description of the creation and first location of man, how mankind corrupted themselves and how God destroyed them with a flood, he simply stated the principal facts and gave a description of the location. And it not being on that continent, he could not point it out to them. And as the country in which Noah then resided was all new to him and his family, no one knew where it was, nor was anyone able then or since then to find it on that continent. Thus the location, though admitted to be somewhere on earth, has been kept a profound mystery to the present time, and consequently the innocent cause of no little speculation. But by degrees it has been opening to the minds of some that the first habitation of man must have been somewhere on the American continent, and the finger of time has been plainly pointing to what is known as the Northwest as the place. But of this last fact, I, Van Sykes, the author, was ignorant when I made the discovery of the garden and commenced developing the facts about it. The discovery resulted from my familiarity with, or thorough knowledge of the Bible, and standing on the hanging garden and looking over the maybe it's like plateau, and admiring its most wonderful scenery and counting the rivers, I became sensibly impressed by a suggestion. Yeah, this is the Garden of Eden, at which suggestion I smiled, as the plateau, to me then, was altogether too large. Of course I had never given it thought, nor measured it up in my own mind to what should or might be its proper dimensions. However, so strong were my impressions that I, Van Slyke, as a matter of pleasantry, used occasionally to say to his friends, or my friends, this is the Garden of Eden. Since Van Slyke commenced to publish his views, claiming a possible reality, while some have mocked others are becoming impressed with the new idea of results being not only possible but highly probable. Where would a scientist place the first pair? To acclimate, and from which to make man. Is that acclimate or acclimate? I think it's acclimate. And from which to make man as he now is, an inhabitant of all the earth. Not too far north, not too far south, our garden is in that place. It should be destitute of money, mineral wealth, as these, if easily obtained, are corrupted in their tendencies, and should be sought and toiled for to be properly enjoyed, and should be placed at a distance, just where God says He provided it, at the head of the stream. Our garden is still in the right place. From inherited wealth and luxury comes danger to the inheritors. Our garden is again right, but it should be a place susceptible of and adapted to moral and intellectual growth, and lead to the adoration and worship of the great builder of the universe, the infinite and perfect. Is there a better place for that in all this beautiful earth than is our garden and its surroundings? If there is, we should like to see it. I, Van Slyke, have related the facts as they have been presented to me, Van Slyke, or as I have discovered them, and believe the reader will be pleased and profited with the results, and he hoped that this would lead to more thorough and satisfactory investigation. That's the words of the author. Garden of Eden. See Genesis 2:8-14. And the Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden. Okay. And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, with a river that ran through the land of Eden watered the garden. And from thence, in the garden, it was parted and became into four heads. Okay. And the fourth river is Euphrates, which means long river, symbol of greatness and importance, and which answers to our Father of waters. It is plain that Eden is a certain country, that the Euphrates River crosses that country, that eastward or the eastward bank of, or at a certain point on that river, is located the Garden of Eden, and that three lesser rivers run through and water this garden, flowing into the great river. Thus four rivers run into and water it, but only when the fourth runs out. As to how it was watered, we have a clue. And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, even as the garden of the Lord, by streams crossing the plain and running into the river of Jordan, just as our three rivers cross our garden plain into our Euphrates. The names given to these rivers were doubtless explanations of facts well known to the antediluvians. Okay, so we have a look at that. Genesis, from the original Aramaic, Brita, or Genesis in English. Okay, get down to where these rivers are. We said that these rivers were split into four. Okay, where are we? I think it's Genesis 2. Okay, here we go. Genesis 2:8. We'll start from there. And the Lord God had consecrated paradise, or Maria, Maran, okay, because Ma means Lord or Master. Lord God had consecrated the paradise, or paradise in Eden from before. Okay, so before He created the human being. And there He set Adam, which in the Aramaic is man or min, whom He had moulded. This is one that He moulded from the dust to resemble Himself, to look like Himself, to have His face, to, He created in His image. And He blew on their faces the breath of life, so they became alive. They had life, and they also had the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, blown into them. And Adam became a living soul, meaning that he was animate. Until he had that spirit in him of life, that breath of life, he was inanimate. So when he received it, he became animate, or a living soul. And the Lord God had consecrated, or made holy, blessed paradise in Eden from before it, before He created Adam. And there He set Adam, whom He had moulded. Yeah, this is the second Adam. Okay, it's not the one that he made in his own image that I've covered in other videos. And the Lord God supplied from the earth, all that is pleasing to the sight and delicious to eat in the tree of life in the midst of paradise. So all the trees, fruit trees, herbs, everything came up from that earth that he created, right? Or that ground. Because he says, he basically ordered it, that all of its kind shall bring forth seed, and then its offspring will emerge. So if you have one tree planted, right, then you'll have more, okay? And then more and more and more, and it carries on like that. So where were we? And the Lord God supplied from the earth all that is pleasing to the sight and delicious to eat in the tree of life in the midst of paradise. And the river, okay, so this maybe is one river, flowed out of Eden, or paradise, to irrigate the paradise, and from there it divided and became 4 tributaries, 4 heads or 4 river heads. The name of the first is Pishon. That is the one which goes around all the lands of Havilah. That's in the old maps, that's Kuwait, where there is gold Kuwait. And the gold of that land is good, where there is also lapis lazuli and beryl stones. That's what they made their jewelry out of. The later Assyrians, etc. And the name of the second river is Gihon. That is the one that goes around all the land of Cush, supposedly Ethiopia. And the name of the third river is Tigris, which goes before Asher. It's where the Asherite, the Assyrians came from later on. And the fourth river is the Euphrates. Okay, and then Lord God fetched Adam and left them in the paradise, so they may work the land and guard it. Okay, so that's basically saying the same things as what Van Sykes, what this author is saying. Okay. Yeah, the river that ran through the land of Eden watered the garden, so that's one river, and from there in the garden it was parted and became into 4 heads, or 4 river heads, or okay. It goes on about the fourth river is Euphrates, which means long river, symbol of greatness and importance, and which answers to our Father of waters. He's trying to say it's a certain country. Okay, it's not actually in the Middle East or the East, right? Hasn't been found there and all this sort of stuff. So he's trying to say it's in a country. Okay, what is he saying? Which country is it? We need not now undertake to prove or show what must readily be admitted, that there is no such spot or coming together of rivers in the region where it was first supposed to be, and which has caused explorers and researchers to turn to Africa and other countries in search of the place, and Dr. Warren, with all his learning and ingenuity, to the North Pole. But we have found it where he and others can come and see for themselves. It is located on the eastward bank of the Mississippi River, between the beautiful cities of La Crosse, Wisconsin, and Winona, Minnesota. Please notice the beauty and euphony of those names. The Mississippi River, the Bible, Euphrates River, being one of the longest and most picturesque rivers in the world. Its valley proper, with its tributaries, some of which reach far out into Havilah, the land of good gold, extends from the Allegheny Mountains on the eastern border 2,000 miles westward to the Rocky Mountains on the western border, and from the Gulf of Mexico on the south, extending 2,000 miles north across the United States into the British, it's got here British, don't think he's saying British, possessions. This vast area, it could be, this vast area Eden, containing the most fertile and habitable region of earth, and is being jumped here somewhere. Okay, it is located on the eastward bank of the Mississippi River, between the beautiful cities of La Crosse, Wisconsin and Winona, Minnesota. Please notice the beauty and euphony of these names. Euphony. The Mississippi, the Bible Euphrates River being one of the longest and most picturesque rivers in the world. Its valley, proper with its tributaries, some of which reach far out into Havilah, the land of good gold, extends from the Allegheny Mountains on the eastern border, 2,000 miles westward to the Rocky Mountains on the western border, and from the Gulf of Mexico on the south, extending 2,000 miles north across the United States into the British possessions. This vast area, Eden, containing the most fertile and habitable region of Earth, and is being settled and inhabited by the most industrious, enlightened, Christianized and well-to-do people in the world, the asylum or universal home of the oppressed and needy of all lands, contains the heart of the New World, the land of promise. In this Christian United States of America, central in its domain, Eden is our Garden of Eden. The soil is not a deep, rich paste like the American bottoms opposite St. Louis on the same river, which is known to be the richest land in the world, but higher, drier and more habitable, easily cultivated and adapted to gardening. The river here, as in most places, has three banks. The first a little above high water mark, densely covered with forest trees, which constitute the islands and river bottoms, cut up by the water, by watercourses and sloughs. Not really sure on that one. The river and bottom are about 2 miles wide over and through which the laughing and father of waters courses run and play their dances. The second bank is high and dry above the highest watermark, and generally smooth prairie and ready in a state of nature for the garden plough, extending back on one or both sides of the river for miles, making a valley at this place of about 10 miles in the widest when we reach a bank, bluff or rocky wall which rises on each side of our garden to the altitude of 600 feet above the river, being the point of the highest bluffs on the Mississippi. So it goes on with more descriptions about it. Okay. He's telling you, look, now that we're up where we can see, let us look across and around this garden. Turn now and face the southwest. There before and below you flows the Mississippi, whose name is as euphonious as Euphrates, or its own flowing waters. See its broad channels, queer and picturesque, its trees and vine-clad bottoms, lovely beyond description, its general course not meandering, but evenly hugging the base of the Minnesota bluffs or western wall of the garden, which it does for some 25 miles or so, 25 miles, or from just below Winona to just above La Crosse, running in a southeasterly and southern direction, making a beautiful curve, leaving the main garden valley on the eastward bank in the form of a section of an amphitheatre 35 miles long, 5 miles wide at each end, and 10 miles through the centre. Okay, and it goes on about it some more. But as Christians have taken possession of the hanging garden, the serpents have been destroyed or are disappearing. Okay, it gives some more information on the scenery. It goes on about just beyond La Crosse City, and to the left we see the outline entrance of Mormon Coulee Valley, which creek bounds the lower end of our garden. As you glance up the Black River Valley coming in from the right is Fleming's Creek or Lewis Valley, a fertile valley in which is located the euphonious Mandora. Those blue highlands apparently at the head of the main valley is Robinson's or Pine Hill between Black River Falls and Sparta, and so forth. Beautiful for situation is Galesville, the joy of all its fine water power health giving mineral springs. Galesville University and choice people. Beautiful for situation is Galesville, the joy of all inhabitants, if not all of the earth. This guy was a Methodist, I believe. Yeah, he's still going on about it, giving a description of what he saw and what he claimed. From our past observation, it is not so very strange to us that individuals often pass along over important sections of earth without noticing its beauty and its glory. Not that its flowers are altogether hidden, but that they have become commonplace, or for lack of attention on account of preoccupancy of the mind, are not noticed. Some more descriptions. If you are at Galesville, ask someone to point out Houston's Bluff. You need no guide, only good walking muscles. Pick your way and tug on until you reach the top. Then, after taking a general look all around you, sit down and rest. You now take another general sweeping bird's eye view all around, seeing everything in the aggregate. Then rest a while and contemplate it, and so forth. Goes on about a guy called Dr. Warren. President W.J. Warren of the Boston University has devoted over a column in the Christian Advocate of August 20, 1885. Engel claims to demolish, and doubtless does, the preceding 80 nugatory attempts. Was that like negative? Attempts at a solution. And as anyone can see, Dr. Warren demolishes Engel's attempts to foist his riverless Tartarian swale in the heart of the North Syrian desert as the Veritable Eden, in the lower end of which was his garden, alternating between a pool or lake caused by the rains and filled by the torrents during the rainy season, and a dried up, parched, barren spot drying up towards the end of May or 1st of June without a green thing, utterly uninhabitable, and which Engel admits has always been so. Engel puts in a claim of divine inspiration directing to the spot, and he writes with the positiveness and unreasonableness of a crank. All the inspiration we claim is the beauty and grandeur of the scenery and the adaptation and facsimile or actual description of the spot to the description given in the Bible, a divinely inspired book, as their guide to it. And there's plenty more here. You might want to read it for yourself. Find it online. It's free. Probably download it as well. Just a brief on this. There's quite a lot here, so I don't want to go through it like a 6-week seminar. But what I found was on another website, this place here, the site here. It's got a map behind there. I can't really get rid of this, right? But it's got this old newspaper article on Reverend Van Slyke. So you've got to do personal research on those people. Like I was saying in another video, I did one on Anthony Kidman, because I was going to do a self-help book that he had part in, the production, the writing of it, whatever. A little voice in my head says, you don't know nothing about this guy, go check him out. And I found out he was in a sex cult. He was going to go up for it, but he died before he could go to trial. So I might just make this larger so I can see it myself. Okay. So you can read it as well. Okay. Get rid of these. Okay. The article says Crazy Reverend Van Slyke by Margaret During. Looks like it's an old newspaper cutting. There's the offender right there, Reverend D.O. Van Slyke. Of all the persons who rest in Galesville Cemetery, Reverend David Van Slyke is the happiest because he believes he is buried in the Garden of Eden. Reverend Van Slyke was so sure the Garden of Eden was located in Tupelo County rather than in Asia, or Asia Minor. He spent more than 29 years trying to convince the public with biblical and geographic arguments. The result is a 48-page booklet, now in its 5th printing, that is still given to any interested person by the Bank of Galesville. Reverend Van Slyke saw the Mississippi River as Euphrates, the 4th river crossing the Garden of Eden. He strengthened his case with 3 lesser rivers three lesser rivers run through and water this garden, flowing into the great river. Reverend Van Slyke believed the lesser rivers to be the Black, Trempelo, and the Crosse rivers. And there's his map here. Picture of it, right? Galesville, Wisconsin. He even used the weather to prove he lived in a divinely protected area. 30 years of observation has taught me that small, single storms pass around us, and larger ones often quite. Nor did he overlook the serpent as proof of the garden's location when he referred to a snake-inhabited bluff near Trempelo as notable and notorious for rattlesnakes. Reverend Van Slyke was scorned and considered a crackpot. Neighbours said he was senile, and even professional brothers regarded him as eccentric. Reverend Van Slyke died owning a burial lot in Galesville cemetery, marked by a rough stone which he quarried in the Trempelo hills and moved 6 miles by stoneboat to its resting place, 200 feet above Galesville, where it may be seen by visitors. Was Van Slyke crazy, or was that area really the Garden of Eden? Eons before Judge Gale surveyed it for a town. Doris Gipple, Leon, an eminent citizen, Doris Gipple Leon, an eminent citizen of Galesville, perhaps voiced the sentiment of all when asked if she believed the theory applied. I'd like to. Okay, and some more here. Where it's located. Information here. 5 minutes from business centre to Gale College, founded 1859. Tomb of Judge Gale on campus. 5 minutes to Arctic Springs, grave of the Princess Marinuka, granddaughter of the great chief Decorah, 20,000 trout and basins. 10 minutes to Decorah Park and mounds and more. Okay, and there's Galesville promotion 1950s. Galesville invites the world to come and enjoy its beauty, its history, its legends. Tourists should view the ancient mounds at historic Decorah Park, an Indian battleground, the grave of the Princess Marinuka, the delights of the dells of Marinuka and Highcliffe Park. In the summer, cottages on Lake Marinuka. Yeah, I found that last. Here's this book here. I think they give that away. Van Slyke's 1886 booklet on why Galesville is the site of the Garden of Eden. And it states here, who is the real Judge Gale? And Abe Lincoln or J.P. Morgan? Area history piece has been returned to its original home. Okay, some more articles. 1940. There's quite a lot here. I think it's what's this? January 21, 1954. Mrs. William Hunter starts on world trip. Mrs. William Hunter, Decorah Prairie, farm wife and grandmother, left Sunday, January 17th on a 4-month trip to New Zealand, in the Down Under country where she was born. Okay, she went back there. The trip comes as a culmination of almost a lifetime of dreams and plans, and is the realization of planning and saving, literally since she can remember. As May Bull, the Decorah Prairie woman, was born at Christchurch, New Zealand, and left there with her mother, 2 brothers and a young half-sister when she was 10 years old. Since then, she says she has seen the country in her mind's eye and has never wavered from her plan to revisit the place. Originally, Mr. and Mrs. Hunter planned the trip together, but he decided to give up that plan to allow Mrs. Hunter to make an extended trip. Before returning in 4 months, Mrs. Hunter will have circled the globe. Okay. 3 aunts and 4 uncles of Mrs. Hunter still live on the 2 islands which comprise New Zealand, North Island and South Island. At Auckland in the north and at Christchurch in the south. Numerous cousins and more distant relatives there await her coming. Okay, so she is from New Zealand. It's interesting. Leaving New Zealand April 1st, Mrs. Hunter will travel by coastal steamer to Australia. I guess she went to Oz as well. What's this? Republican celebrate Wisconsin. The Republican celebrates Wisconsin sesquicentennial. Okay, there's a lot of information here. What's this? Crystal Valley School. 1871. Wow. Very old newspaper clippings. Trying to get to the bottom of this, because I don't think it's got anything else to do with the author. Go through it. Go through it fast. Yeah. Is there anything else here? That's of interest. Yeah. No more on the author that I know, that I can see. You can go flicking through it. Go up, go up, go up. No, I don't think there's anything here. Yeah, it's kind of weird. Yeah, a lot of good newspaper clippings here. Okay, what is this? Yeah, you can go get it at Gutenberg, have a look at it yourself. Project Gutenberg, it's free to download. Just all the information there, not really relevant. It's a pretty short book, by the looks of it. Must be like one of those pamphlets or something on it. As they were stating, it was given away when people, to tourists, when people visited one of those one of their shops. Yeah, kind of an odd claim. Was he right, or was he just like totally senile, as they suggested? Was he totally crazy or what? But he gives a really good detailed description of that Galesville in his day. I think 1800s, 1889, something like that. Yeah. Okay, it says here, Engel puts in a claim of divine inspiration, directing him to the spot, and he writes with the positiveness and unreasonableness of a crank. Positiveness and unreasonableness of a crank. All the inspiration we claim is the beauty and grandeur of the scenery and the adaptation and facsimile or actual description of the spot to the description given in the Bible, a divinely inspired book, as our guide. But he says here, we are aware that we are living in an age of scientific speculation, of counterfeits and humbugs. After misguided explorers have given us up the search in the eastern continent, a scientist, to show his skill, must throw a cloud on a possibility of finding a literal four-rivered spot on Earth, and gives us an ingenious approach, unapproachable North Pole Garden. The crank gives us a volcanic Tartarian riverless desert as a spot, under a profession of divine inspiration. A land speculator must juice up. He goes on and on. Okay, but we have an Eden that challenges your attention, and a garden that will awaken your admiration. Come and see. Okay. Was he right or was he wrong? Was he a crackpot? Or was he divinely inspired? Okay, leave you with that. As he say, in giving the description of the Garden of Eden, does the Bible there or anywhere say so, or is there any grounds to believe or suppose that it was written or printed in legible, imperishable characters on the walls around, on the sky above, or on conspicuous places within the garden? This is the Garden of Eden. If not, what is our guide? evidently not a low there, here, or a low there, but the plain description, fairly interpreted, and the place that answers that description, and we have it. Now the public press of La Crosse and Winona within the borders of our garden, and who might be supposed to know the merit or demerit of my claim, this guy Slyke, have not deigned to notice my articles on the Garden of Eden, so they cannot be accused of conspiring with me to mislead the public, to attract to their cities, or of having any faith in my discovery. And yet I, Slyke, challenge any one of them to show any material incorrectness of my description and statements. And it goes on some more. What does he say? When God formed the earth into a globe and set it rolling to keep it so, and started it in its orbit around the sun, and the light of the sun first flashed upon it, producing the requisite light and motion for marking time, then with half in light and half in shade as round the sun, earth took its flight, time on earth began. That was infinite time, infinite space. The day, the month, the year, chronological time commences on the first day at high 12, in the evening and the morning ending on the second day at high 12. One complete diurnal revolution of the earth was the first day, and as man was the only intelligence being placed on earth capable of noting time, his residence was evidently on that central line. Our long river and Garden of Eden is exactly there on the 90th meridian of central time, as laid down on our present timetable maps for this continent. Okay, this is what he claims. I think it might be incorrect if we have the original Aramaic, Brita, translated into English. I think the guy's completely wrong. Just go up here somewhere. Yeah, see? As the beginning, the Son of God creates the heavens and the earth. And the earth was for him and by him. So it's all made for him, by him. And the darkness was over the face of infinite space, and the Spirit of God was over the layers of the water. So it's infinite space, endless space, right? Never ending. Okay? Not saying anything about time. There was no time as we know it, no 24-hour clock. Okay, it's all to do with the lunar solar cycle, and the moon and the sun, and the sun and the moon and the evolutions, the planets and the evolutions. Yeah, so yeah, and his description of the day, I think, is out. Okay, if this is the original manuscripts, translated into English from the original language, Aramaic, then Aramaic word would be Euma, eon, immeasurable period, age, or day with a capital D. Okay, it's unfathomable period where God created. So you can't put a definite date, time, etc., on it, because we weren't there, and it's immeasurable. It was an immeasurable period, unfathomable. We can't understand it. We can't, pinpoint. As I said, can't pinpoint when where it's actually created. What time, what hour, what day, what month, what week, what month, what year, because it doesn't provide it here. Okay. And if you're a scientist or whatever, you could only say, 20 million years ago, something like that, whatever, You can't actually say January the 3rd, whatever the date was when you created it, at 12, 12:01, whatever, Eastern time, or Pacific time. Yeah, you can't pinpoint it like that. So yeah, I think this guy, I'm not too sure about this guy. I think he might have been he just had a funny idea, a theory, and he ran with it. Yeah, I've got some information. It's all about Galesville in America. It's very interesting. Somebody's obviously kept the different articles that came out. Yeah, very interesting. Who's this? Some remembrance of somebody. Oh, Jehovah's Witnesses, what does it say there? That'd be interesting. You can see that. Where is it? Where are we? Before 1970, Jehovah's Witnesses in the area went to Winona to worship. Then in 1971, a congregation was formed in the area and met in the Centerville schoolhouse. In 1974, a small kingdom hall was built by volunteer labour. They don't call it a meeting place at a church. They don't call it a meeting place at church, but a kingdom hall. Yeah, they do that today. At that time, 30 members went door to door in ministry covering southern Trempealeau County and part of Buffalo County. In 1986, they purchased the former Baptist church on McKeith Road, Galesville. It was gutted and remodeled by volunteers. The Jehovah's Witnesses don't have a single minister, but anyone meeting scriptural requirements is a minister, according to Steve Flint, who submitted information on the Jehovah's Witnesses. Ministers are not paid but have other jobs in addition to their ministry. Ministers are also teachers. Currently 62 are in ministry to southern Trempealeau County and northern Crosse County. The congregation meets for 2 hours on Sunday. They are open to the public. They do not pass a plate for offerings but make free will donations in a contribution box. Yeah, when you walk out, you chuck some money in there. Yeah, I remember that. Visiting one of those kingdom halls. Pretty much fact there, what he's talking about. Okay, there's a lot of information here. I'm going to bypass it, get rid of it. Okay, so yeah, it's kind of weird, wasn't it? But if you want to read the whole thing yourself, I'll leave the link at the bottom here of this video. So what's this again? As everything in creation was full and perfect, God wisely placed the earth in the summer solstice point of its orbit, and this continent facing the sun, so that when he placed man upon it, as to give him the benefit of harvest and correct time, and all of which is proved by the change God ordered from the original reckoning of time. When Israel left Egypt, Exodus 12:2, this month Abib, the 7th month, shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. This change in the beginning of the year from midsummer to midwinter. The commencing of the reckoning of the day has also been changed from midday to midnight. That the original first month, now the 7th month, was harvest time, is proved from Leviticus 23:9 to 39, and that the seasons of summer and winter were then as now, is also proven by Genesis 1:14, in the history of the clothing of the first pair, first aprons, then skins and furs. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Read it. Yeah. Do some personal research on the guy. I don't know. He might be a little wacky. I don't really know. Yeah, so subscribe to our channel, leave your comments down below, and give us a thumbs up or a like, and make sure you set that bell so you get instant notification. And now go out and tell all your friends. If you stay in Galesville, say, hey, look at this. I didn't know this. Look what this guy found. Well, you probably know. They probably still give out that booklet. His booklet. I'm not really sure. Okay, but yeah, if you know Galesville, if you live there, then check this out. Garden of Eden by Reverend D.O. Van Slyke. Actually, what was his name again? This is D.O. Van Slyke. Okay, copyrighted by C.S. Van Slyke. I thought down here somebody had a different name. Okay, so here's a go check it out. And we'll spot you again with the next exciting video real soon.